Imagine a world where the United States never purchased Alaska from Russia. What would happen to the country, and how would the map of North America look today? In 1867, the US acquired Alaska for just $7.2 million, a move that many at the time believed to be a waste of money. But what if that deal never happened? What if Alaska remained in Russian hands? Let's explore how history might have unfolded differently. At the time of the purchase, the US was still recovering from the Civil War. Many Americans question why the US would want a cold, sparsely populated land in the far north. But what if Alaska remained under Russian control? The United States would have missed out on the natural resources that the state would eventually provide, including oil, gold, and fish. Would the US economy have been as strong without Alaska's contributions? Had Alaska not been part of the US, the country's geopolitical influence in the Pacific would have been weakened. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the US was focused on expanding its influence in the Pacific. Without Alaska, the US would have had a more difficult time establishing dominance in the region. Would the Spanish-American War and subsequent influence over the Philippines and Puerto Rico have played out differently? Would the US have been able to create a stronghold in the Pacific, or would Japan have asserted more control over the region? Russia, on the other hand, would have faced its own challenges. Alaska was difficult to defend, and maintaining control of such a distant territory was costly for the Russian Empire. What if Russia had kept Alaska through the early 20th century? The geopolitical dynamics in the Pacific might have been very different. Would Russia have had a stronger foothold in the Pacific Ocean? Would the Soviet Union have used Alaska as a key strategic base during the Cold War? Alaska was rich in resources, especially oil. By the mid-20th century, oil reserves in Alaska became one of the state's most valuable assets. If Russia had kept Alaska, would they have been able to exploit these resources in the same way? The United States would have missed out on the massive economic boost that Alaska provided, including the boom in oil production that helped fuel America's economy in the 20th century. On the other hand, would Russia have capitalized on this wealth, or would they have struggled to tap into the resources due to the remote nature of the region? Without the purchase of Alaska, the US would have been much smaller. Would Canada have expanded into the region? The US might have faced pressure from Great Britain or other nations seeking to take control of Alaska's resources. Imagine if Canada, still a British colony at the time, had taken over Alaska instead. How would that have changed the relationship between the US and Canada? Would the United States have attempted to take control of the land in the 20th century, potentially leading to a war over the region? The absence of Alaska might have influenced American politics in the 20th century. Without Alaska's resources, the US might have struggled to fund its military and infrastructure in the post-World War II era. How would the country have fared in the Cold War without Alaska as a base for military operations in the Pacific? Would the US have looked elsewhere for military presence, possibly focusing more on the Philippines or Hawaii? Alaska is home to some of the most pristine wilderness areas in the world. Without the US overseeing conservation efforts, would these areas have been as protected under Russian rule? What would have happened to Alaska's wildlife, including its iconic polar bears, moose, and wolves? How would the development of oil and mining industries have impacted these ecosystems? Would Russia have treated the land with the same level of environmental concern as the US? The purchase of Alaska, despite initial skepticism, was a pivotal moment in American history. If the US had never made that deal, the world we live in today would look very different. From the lack of resources to a weakened geopolitical presence, the absence of Alaska would have left a gap in the United States' influence in the Pacific and beyond. But, what do you think? How would history have changed if Alaska had remained part of Russia? Would the US have expanded into the Pacific differently, or would the world have seen a different kind of geopolitical struggle? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more alternative history scenarios. If you're interested in exploring even more what-if scenarios, check out What If? Book of Alternative History for thought-provoking ideas and alternative historical events that could have shaped our world. The link to the book is in the description.